We agree? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good. So let's start our session, our panel on peace building. It's on the one hand, it's encouraging to see many of you in this hall, but on the other hand, it's sad to witness that the issue of peace building once again is becoming very, very acute and touching many people, if not everybody. I remember many years ago, sometime maybe 10 years ago, Pope Francis made a statement in one of his Orbi and Urbi, and he stated that the world is in a horrible shape. And it was 10 years ago. And now when we reflect back, 10 years ago the world was in much better shape than it's now. And I don't know what is the adjective to use to express in what shape the world is now. But I don't want us to stay in that rabbit hole of depression and helplessness to witnessing to what's happening to this world today. I want us to come out from this room with hope. And to this end, I want to quote Anne Jul Johannesen, the host of World Council from Denmark, who spoke in the church. And she said, if we lose our hope, we won't be able to find strength to go out and to try to make a change. So let's try together to make this panel, this engagement panel, in a way that we come out from this room with hope, that we will have the strength to go out and to make change. And having said that, now permit me to present our panelists. And I will start with the people who are on the stage. From Rami Kumer, from East Jerusalem YMCA. Rami is the rehabilitation program director in East Jerusalem YMCA. And he has graduated from Chicago University as a psychologist and social worker, and he uses his rich knowledge in very creative way, providing mental health support programs to children and young people in Palestine based on a methodology which is called community-based psychological support, which is an incredibly valuable methodology to learn from and to model. Welcome, Rami. Let's welcome Rami. Kim Young-min, Secretary General YMCA South Korea. Apart from YMCA, Kim is a very passionate believer of peace in Korean Peninsula. He is permanent co-president of the Social Platform for Peace and Reunification of Korea. Welcome, Kim. Marta Huretska from Ukraine. My very beautiful router. Marta was a board member of YMCA Europe and part of the steering committee of YMCA 175. Now she's board member of YMCA Ukraine and very busy with the crisis response work right now ongoing. Unfortunately, because of the war, Marta had to move from Ukraine to Germany, but we hope that she will go back home. Welcome, Marta. Then we have our online panelists, two very honorable people, which I have the pleasure and honor to present. First of all, let me present you Emma Leslie. Emma is a person who I have been hearing about many years from my peacemaker colleagues from Europe. And I have the very special pleasure to meet Emma around this panel. Welcome, Emma. Emma is the founding director of the Center of Peace and Conflict Studies in Cambodia. She is Australian-Cambodian. Apart from this center, she is also the founder of the Cambodia Peace Museum. What is very interesting that Emma is, on the one hand, created PhD program in applied conflict transformation, but on the other hand, she also moderates, trains, teaches UN personnel in mediation. Emma is involved in many peace negotiation processes in Asia Pacific. I don't want to list. You can learn more about all of our panelists in the app, where you can read more about our speakers and panelists. Emma was a Nobel Peace Prize nominee and was profiled as Hero of Dialogue. Welcome, Emma, to our panel. And the last but not the least, our founder, Mr. Javier Castellano, or as we agreed, Javier. Javier is Under-Secretary General of International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, our sister organization. He has been a Red Cross volunteer for many years. He's from Ecuador, but joined International Federation back in 1998. It's almost the same time when I joined the YMCA Europe, after the Hurricane Mitch in Central America. Javier has rich experience in humanitarian assistance work. As we know, Red Cross is the largest relief and humanitarian assistance organization in the world at local, national, regional, and international levels. Welcome, Javier. We will run our engagement panel the following way. In the beginning, we will ask Emma to deliver us her keynote speech. And then you will have some time in the audience to interact with each other and kind of feedback between you on the keynote speech. Then we will move to the panelists. I will have questions to them. Then, after the panelists have finished, we were finished with the question and answer between the moderator and the panelist. We will ask Mr. Javier Castellano to feedback on what has been in the panel. Afterwards, again, the audience will have time, 5 minutes, to interact and talk to each other and also think about the questions. The same goes with the online participants. They will have some time to reflect and ask questions, and then we will go to the question and answers. In the end, we have a small ceremony, which we would like to keep a secret. And in the end, we will watch a video and finish the engagement panel. So this is the program. Do we agree with this, that we go this way? Yeah. Okay. So then let's invite our dear Emma, Dr. Emma Leslie, to deliver her keynote speech to us. And once again, Emma, thanks a lot for agreeing to join us. And I really hope that one day we will also meet in person and we collaborate together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Vardan. I hope you can hear me clearly. I hope you'll give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Great. I know you don't want to start with the depressing things, but as a good conflict analyst, I think we need to be reminded that while many of us focused on COVID in this last 2 years, really the fires, and I know the theme of this event is Ignite, but the fires of the planet really have started to burn. And in 2019, I really want to draw you to the Asia Pacific because that's where I am, but also because it was really in Hong Kong that we started to see crackdowns just before the time that COVID started. And we started to see the strength of the Chinese state exercising its muscle. We went on then in February of that following year, 2021, to a terrible coup d'etat in Myanmar, where the military took back the 10 years of democracy that people had been able to build. We then, by August, saw the fall of Kabul and the return of the Taliban. And so shocking to so many of us that after so many decades of building peace and connecting with Afghan people through civil society networks and so on, that we saw the flood of people out to the rest of the world. Of course, you've already spoken about the situation in Ukraine in your deliberations there, but let's not forget that between those events, there was also a coup d'etat in Sudan, an outbreak of civil war in the Tigray in Ethiopia, the ongoing civil wars in Yemen and Syria. And of course, by April, and I hope that we'll hear about that later from the panel, is of course the outbreak of fighting this year in the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And of course, let's not forget the people that stormed the presidential palace in Sri Lanka back in March of this year. Nobody needs reminding about the number of conflicts we face around the world. We also have to be conscious that certain conflicts which capture the headlines, which capture the imagination of certain parts of the planet, are not forgotten. Let's not forget Bougainville in Papua New Guinea, which is still longing for its independence after it's a peace agreement 20 years ago. Let's not forget the Chittagong hill tracts of different parts of Bangladesh. Let's not forget Kashmir and so many other parts of the African continent, Central Europe, and so many other places. Let's not forget the depth of racism in countries like my own home of origin, Australia, in the United States, and so many other places. So yes, we have a challenge in front of us. But what I noticed on February 1 of 2021 was that there were not only violent conflicts burning, but there are different types of fires taking hold in our planet. And I want to introduce you to a few of those fires that I see burning. I hope that you can see this clearly. I want to introduce you to Esther Zino Bamvo and E. Tizamong. Both of these women were featured in Time magazine as two of the top 100 most influential people in our planet. Now that says something to you. They are not Obama, they are not Trump, they are not Putin, they are not Zelensky. They are two ordinary, everyday women who woke up on February 1 to find their country now seized by a coup and the military returning to power in Myanmar, and who walked out their front doors and said, no way, not this time, enough is enough. And they went to the streets initially to protest, but then they started to build a movement. And they built a movement of young people across Myanmar who today are uncompromising in their position that they will not return to military rule. Alongside of them stood Angel who hit the streets running, just 17 years of age, but quite clear that, as her t-shirt says, everything will be okay, but that actually her life would be what it took to continue to say no to the situation and the system and structure that was being imposed upon her. These three women, for me, personify the kind of fire that's starting to burn in our planet. You can see that fire in Joshua Wong, who is the democracy activist we know well. His documentaries on Netflix from the Hong Kong protests. And I share this picture with you because here he is giving the solidarity symbol to Myanmar people while he himself is being arrested in Hong Kong. He's also sending love to the world. A young man with every reason to hate, and yet in the moment that he's being arrested, sending love to the world. Here's Greta Thunberg. Many of you know her as the young person who would not give up her protest, would not go to school because of the significant depth of what she feels for the climate. Malala and so many others. So what I want to share with you today is, what is this extraordinary fire that's burning, and what does it look like? How can we characterize this other fire that's burning in our midst? For me, it's a 21st century flame. It's young people, young leaders who already understand that conflicts are complex. They are not linear. There are not two parties in any one conflict. That you cannot solve a conflict by flying in an international mediator over the top of it. They understand that conflicts and issues like climate change and the conflict associated with it are borderless. It is not a Myanmar conflict. It is not a Ukraine conflict. It is not a Sudanese or an Ethiopian or a Syrian or a Yemeni conflict. These are conflicts that are so interconnected that when the fighting breaks out in Ukraine, the next day the fuel price in Sri Lanka, in Australia and other places immediately increases. So these leaders understand that conflicts cannot be characterized by their geography. They understand, just as many of those on this panel in front of you understand, that peace building begins in the midst of that crisis, that conflicts are not linear. They don't start, get resolved, and exist in a post-conflict environment. In fact, they are ongoing and always with us. And therefore, when they escalate to a coup d'etat, to an invasion, to an outbreak of fighting, it's exactly those moments that give them the possibility to start talking about the kind of peace they want to build. They don't talk about ceasefires. They don't talk about peace talks and negotiations and peace agreements, which may well never be implemented. And I want to draw in our friends from Colombia who've suffered from that plight. But they talk about a kind of transformation, a different kind of world that they want to live in. They are not bound by UN Resolution 1325 or the new UN resolution on youth, peace and security. They are already thinking far beyond that. They are not begging for a place at the table. They are not asking for inclusivity, because in their very way of being, they are inclusive. For me, they are also feminist. And for me, feminist is not just about women. It's about sharing power. Feminism is, after all, a model opposite to patriarchy, which is about how do we collaborate with one another. And one of the wonderful words that you have in your theme for this time together is collaboration. Collaboration is the essence of how we share power. And so these young leaders are showing us an alternative way, that you don't seize power through a coup, through an invasion, by taking it from people. You find ways where we can coexist together with power, sharing power with one another. Many of the conflicts that I've named are about the struggle for self-determination, the right to live in the way that I want to live. Somehow, in our simple brains of the last 50 years, we've boiled this down to border disputes, ethnic conflicts, religious conflicts, as if somehow people live in boxes. People live with an identity and can't move beyond it. That's not how I understand human beings. Human beings desire to connect, to be with one another, just as all of you are there in Denmark, enjoying hugging one another, feeling the energy of each other after all of this time. Collaboration, power with, not power over, is how these young leaders already understand that leadership is. Peace leadership is. Peace building for them is to share power. They also understand that to address conflict, it isn't about the lowest common denominator. It isn't thrashing out a negotiation and compromising to a point where we can agree a peace accord. We can stand on a stage and clap and cheer for those who have somehow found their way to peace, and yet have not managed to transform the structures, the systems, the constitutions, the laws, the policies which brought about the conflict at the very beginning. The right to speak my language, the right to my land, the right to my identity, the right to be able to be me. They understand that conflict transformation cannot be addressed in these menial models of mediation that we continue to teach and to share. They understand that 21st century peace building, mediation, dialogue processes are creative, are born, as Vardan said in his introduction, of trauma, that we can't actually heal the past, but that we take the past with us into our future and we let it inform who we become into that very future. These young leaders have boundless amounts of energy. They don't start with the drudgery of the numbers of conflicts and the statistics we have about how actually now after 10 years it's worse. They begin with a can-do mentality that says, what are we going to do now? Let's move forward. They don't just believe in solutions. They believe in a new way of being, of living, of being humanity in a planet that we have tortured and tormented for far too long. They are not talking about whether we use violence or non-violence. They are talking far beyond that. They don't define themselves, their movements, as violent or non-violent. They take the action they think is important to help them move forward, to move forward their objectives. So vision, collaboration, solutions, but so much more than glass half full. For them, this word ignite is everything. And I have to say that in your introduction, Vardan, you didn't mention that I am a grandma, so I had to look up the word lit. And in the Urban Dictionary, when we say something is lit, it means it's awesome, it's cool, it's on fire. Young people talk about being lit in that they're turned up, they're popping. There's so much possibility. And so that's why when I saw some clips and some pictures and videos and heard you affirming your pillars in this last day and a half together, I can see that you are ignited, that the YMCA is ignited, that I have to say, I want to amend a little bit of Ban Ki-moon's message to you. I believe he said, be the change you want to see. But with respect to him, I want to say that you are the change that I want to see. That young leaders, just as those that I've mentioned, that so many of you in that room, you are already the change we want to see. You are already on fire. You are lit. You are ignited. And so I don't want to hear any more about what you're going to do in the future, how we're going to teach you and give you and pass on our wisdom. I'm thrilled and excited about the fact that there is a new generation who is already on fire, who are already throwing out all of our models and frameworks of peace building, who are living in this 21st century right in the heat of the worst violent conflicts that we have seen in so many decades. And they are powering forward and inventing and creating new possibilities. The task that they have and that we have to support them is overwhelming. But we must be reminded that it takes just one light to light a room. It takes just a little salt to make the food tasty. It takes just a smidgen of yeast to raise the bread. And so it takes just one spark to be lit. All of us, no matter how big or small we feel we are, have that responsibility to ignite now. Whether we reach out to the Indigenous community that we've always been afraid to approach, whether we open our arms to refugees anywhere in the world. There are 300 Afghan refugees sitting in Cambodia, of all places right now. Wherever we are, each one of us has to begin the peace building in the midst of the crisis we face. We have to be in the 21st century. And above all, we have to identify the fires that burn around us, which are not those terrible headlines and dull and difficult statistics about how many have died, but how many young leaders have grown up out of that violence, who are now lit, who are ignited with so much passion and so much creativity and possibility that we can only sit humbly at their feet and listen. I see Mr. Kim on that stage and I think, how is it possible that we have allowed 70 years of a Korean war which bubbles and boils away? I only believe that the next generation of North and South Koreans will take us out of that spiral, and that all of these young leaders I've mentioned and so many more around the world are this extraordinary hope and possibility we have for peace building everywhere. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward for the ignite of all of you. God bless.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Emma. The feeling is that you have been present at this General Assembly from the day one. And lovely, lovely keynote, and exactly what we need. Now let's ask the audience to interact some 5 minutes with each other. I think it would be also a good opportunity for you to get to know each other. If you are sitting next to someone you don't know, just get to know each other, and then some 5 minutes reflect on what you have heard. There will be no need of reflecting back to the plenary, just between you. Okay? 5 minutes. You know, it's, for example, you know, shall we continue? Was good sharing? Did you get to know somebody new, or you just shared with your friends? Second one, okay. Anyway, that's still good. So, welcome back. And now allow me to continue with my moderation. And here we go. We hope it's going to be a very interesting exercise, because the questions which I'm going to ask to our panelists is about 2030. Imagine we are in 2030, not in 2022. Okay, after 8 years. And my questions are also related to 2030, which is also our Vision 2030 countdown year. And here we go. My first question is to Marta from Ukraine. Marta, it's 2030. You are the president of YMCA Ukraine, which is, woo! And YMCA Ukraine is one of the best, strongest, and affluent YMCAs in the world. You overcome very big crises after the war, and now you are a model YMCA for many national movements to develop. Tell us how you achieved that success.
Thank you, Vardan. That's tough. I have to be honest, this is a very good question, because since the war started, people are mostly asking us about the past, like what happened, and about what is happening now. But we don't really look that much forward into the future, which is actually a very good exercise because dreams do come true. And it's a good exercise to dream. First of all, I was thinking that in 2030 I would be 42, so I would be too old for a president. I would really want to see a young person being a president at the YMCA in Ukraine in 2030, or even earlier than that. But if we dream, I think for me, the most important thing is the people, and its different aspects. It's the people we serve, and now in the context of war, and since this panel is about peace building, I see that in 8 years we have achieved this huge success because we were on the ground and we were healing the trauma, both individual and collective. And when I say this, I'm talking about not reminiscing about the past, but really giving the kids and the young people of war a chance to get their life back. And it's about providing a safe space in the YMCA, and it's also about providing mental health support to heal that trauma, and it's also about reintegrating people back into the communities. And I'm sure you know that there are many internally displaced people and many refugees across the world. So reintegration means giving those people a chance to have their life back in a way, and to have this sense of normality back that will help them to then find opportunities to thrive. And that's a huge part of the success of YMCA Ukraine in 2030. There are other people I can clearly see on the horizon when I imagine this, and those are our own people, our own YMCA volunteers and leaders. You might not know that there are not many people who get paid for their YMCA work. I mean, we just have a bunch of staff, like 4 people who are getting paid. The rest, 20 local YMCAs operating on the ground, are all volunteers, so it's hundreds and hundreds of people. And I really hope that throughout the years, we will be able to provide them with this support as well, because I sometimes think about how we want to change the world, and we want to help everyone, and we want to be everywhere, that we tend to forget about our own. And when the war started, we were focusing so much about helping the displaced people and reaching out to the refugees and going to the communities on the ground, and then seeing our own leaders burnt out, and realizing that we need to serve them too, because they would be the ones who would be going out into the communities and doing all the work. So I see these young people having a career at the YMCA, and it does sound like a dream. I'm being honest with you. I mean, for some countries, this sounds like a normal thing. For Ukraine, having a career at the YMCA is really a dream. And I know personally many friends from Ukraine who have this dream. And I'm really hoping that by 2030, we are able to make this dream come true for many of them, and offer those opportunities. I'm also thinking about focus. Kind of the same, to follow up on what I already said about trying to save the world and make a difference everywhere and for everyone. I think we need to prioritize. And in order to achieve this success in 2030, we will need to determine the areas we want to be focused at and want to be good at. no matter how much we want to help everyone. And that would mean creating things, building things, rebuilding things. I mean, the war is all about destruction, right? So it's an opposite to it. It's about creating something new on the ashes. It's a very good metaphor because you actually can grow so much better on the ashes of something. I mean, the flowers would grow so much better. So I have this metaphor in my head when I'm thinking about the future for YMCA Ukraine. And using this potential, just like we heard in the keynote speech, using this trauma as something that will fuel the young people, and so that they can use this experience, no matter how traumatic, no matter how tragic for many of them, this existential crisis of why is this happening and what's the purpose of life, to actually fuel this change for YMCA Ukraine. And in this aspect, I think Russian army did us a favor, and they made us realize how united we are and how strong we are and how resilient we are. And I hope that in the years to come, when the war is over, when we win the war, we still remember this feeling, we still hold close to it, and again, it fuels us. And I will need to be a little bit more practical, less emotional if I'm a president. So we will have to think about infrastructure. We don't have any YMCA facilities or buildings. Some YMCAs are renting, but it's not big, you know, it's just a bunch of rooms. And if I dream big, I can imagine big and nice YMCA facilities and summer camps and really places for young people and kids to hang out, and a safe place to be. But again, it comes back to the people, right? We can build many houses and have many facilities, but it really comes back to the team, to a dedicated team of people. And so yeah, it's about connecting these people, and also about building bridges and dialogues. And maybe at the moment, young people are not really ready to talk about things. And I have huge hope that in the years to come, love will prevail, and young people will be able to forgive, and that love will be stronger than hate. I'm not really sure how possible this is at the moment for many young people, and this is me being very honest with you, no matter how sad this is. But I definitely hope to see this in 2030. And yeah, basically, when I think about 2030 and the YMCA Ukraine, I see people not giving up. It's really about that hope you were talking about, Vardan. People not giving up and standing strong. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. That's it. Yeah, building on the ashes, but it is possible. Thank you, Marta. We still in 2030. We don't go back. We stay there, you know. And my next guest is Rami.
Thank you.
And he's a very famous writer in 2030. He got a number of prizes, and his book called A Child and a Nation is the bestseller of the last year. Okay, everybody buys it, and it's about mental health of people, of young people who went through war and violence. And I want to ask Rami, what are the 3 key elements of that book that makes it so famous? And I want also to ask you, when we finish, can you sign my copy?
Well, it's an honor to be here and be able to speak to all of you. It's 2030, and we Palestinians now are free, and we have our own country. And for that reason, I decided to write a book. And it was a book about a child and a nation, because I thought now that we are free, we need to surface stories of hope, stories of children under occupation, and give them a voice. Because our children are voiceless, and we need to continue to surface their voices, not only to the Palestinians, but also to the world. I'll be writing about, actually it's 2030, so I wrote a book of many stories of the Palestinian children, but I will tell you my own story. And that's a real story that I'm hoping that will be part of the book. It was Christmas night, and I was 10 years old, and we were just preparing to celebrate Christmas. You know, Christmas in Bethlehem is big. That's where Jesus was born, and we celebrated because we feel we have that ownership of Christmas. And suddenly we hear noises outside of our home. You know, I grew up in a house that every month or every couple months, Israeli soldiers would raid our home at night, and they would take my older brother to prison. And why I'm saying every couple months? Because in Israeli prison, they have this system that you actually can imprison children under the age of 18 and young people without putting them to court. And the only way you do it, you call it administrative detention, meaning that you can imprison people, put them into prison, and have nothing against them. You don't put them to court. You don't charge them with anything because they have done nothing. They're only activists. So I lived that reality for almost 15 years. Every couple months, the soldiers would come at our home, raid the house, beat us, beat my mother, my father, my sister, my brother, and would take him, his name is George, would take him to prison. We will have to deal with all this violence, and afterwards he will get out. Another month, they come back to take him. 15 years, that was our story. I'll go back to that Christmas night. We were just ready to celebrate, the whole family really happy. And we hear knocks on our doors. It's beating, to be honest, not knocking. And suddenly they came in our house. From waiting to celebrate Christmas into a real nightmare. My brother, when he heard those noises, he hidden into a well in our house. We have a well in our house, so he went there because he didn't want to go to prison. So the soldiers came to our house. It was about 40 soldiers. They destroyed the whole house. They beated us. They made me do squat for half an hour, in which I kept my muscles kept frozen for hours. That's why I don't like to do squats now. But suddenly, after all this, after 4 hours of searching for him, the captain came to my father and mother and said, "Listen, I want to tell you something. You have 10 minutes. You have to make a decision. Either you give us your own son. We know that he's here. We can't find him. Or we will bomb the whole house. So you have to make a decision, and you have 10 minutes. 10 minutes, 5 already passed. My father started to get scared. Are they going to be serious? He called my uncle, who is a famous lawyer in Palestine and always work with Palestinian children who are in prison. He told him, "I have 5 minutes. I have to make a decision. Help me. It's either I give them George in my own hands, He was really crying all the time while he was talking to him, or our house will get bombed. Are they serious when they say this? He told him, how many minutes left now? He said, 2 minutes. He said, hang please, go to the soldier, tell them you'll give them George, because they are serious and they will do it now. So my father had to go to the soldiers and give them his very own George to go to prison. When they discovered that he's in the well, they started beating him, they took him out, and they kept beating him in front of all of us. My mother was crying, the whole house was damaged, we were traumatized, and they took him out. 40 soldiers, one by a time. And the last soldier, when he went out of our house, and that's the story I want to share with you, he looked back because Christmas tree was up and it was beautiful. He looked back and said, now you can celebrate Christmas. I'm 40 years old, and every Christmas, that's the meaning of Christmas to us. It was a moment of violence, a moment that they took Christmas away from us that year. So every Christmas, I ensure myself, my family, my kids, that nobody will take the gift of the birth of Jesus Christ, Christmas, from us again. Since then, I have been working positively, energetically to really make a difference in people's life ever since. So that's the story I wrote in the book. But it's not significant. It's not the only story in Palestine. We have thousands of stories that you hear on daily basis, and they are also happening on daily basis. This is why I'll go back to Vardan's intro. I'm not myself an expert. I'm just lucky that I'm working with so many experts on the ground, serving people, releasing all the stress through the YMCA in East Jerusalem and Palestine, to really take this generation from living under trauma into being thriving in our own land in Palestine. Four things I believe they are so important for peace building. When we think of peace building, often we think of treaties and political will and leaders who are shaking hands together and finally they sign treaties, while it's not really. It's the many issues on the ground that we need to deal with in order to build a community that is ready for peace. And I'll be speaking about four things that are very important in Palestine, and I'm sure it's really also important in other contexts of conflict. First, we need to deal with the issue of generational trauma. Trauma is not happening only now. It's not happening for one instance or one emergency incident that is happening here and there. After 70 years of being under occupation, trauma sounds like it's transforming from one generation into the other in the unconscious of people, that every time we are talking to our children, you're not thinking of their future, of the bright side of their future. You're only concerned about their safety. Every time you want to go for a trip, you think of the many checkpoints you will be stopped at. You won't think about the beauty of the trip. So the generational trauma is a trauma that needs to be addressed and needs that peacemakers work on really helping people who are the most suffering, the most vulnerable, into having a better life. The second is us as peacemakers helping to not create a culture of fear. but create a culture of understanding, create a culture of hope, create a culture in which dialogue is very important, not only between countries, but between people themselves in the same context. The third is unchilding the present. What conflict does, especially for our children, that it really unchilds them. It takes children, their childhood away. When children are in prison, when they are beaten, when they are taken from their families, the only thing you are taking away from them is their childhood. So we need to ensure, while we are making for peacemaking, to really help childhood come back to our children. The fourth, and this is one of the most important in peacemaking, that we need to speak truth to power. We need to call things they are. Sometimes we are afraid of big words, but really they don't matter. What matters is the suffering of the people on the ground. And we need to be courageous enough to say, wrong is wrong. We need peace. It doesn't happen peace when we don't talk about the important issues. It happens when we call things by their name. Thank you so much, and thank you for buying my book.
Thank you, Rami. Thanks for signing the book for me. And there I have the $1 million question to Kim.
$1 million.
Because this question is always alive in the YMCA. YMCA has two Nobel Peace Prize winners. One is André Durand, who is the founder of International Red Cross, and Javier is sitting there as our brother organization who we are sharing that Nobel Peace Prize with, and John R. Mott, who got in 1946 Nobel Peace Prize, but again, kind of with another organization, is the International Federation of Christian Students. So I want to be very honest with you, just learning from Rami that we need to speak the truth. The YMCA so far has not kind of absolutely only itself won the Nobel Peace Prize. But it's 2030. Kim is Secretary General of World Alliance of YMCAs. He took the office after Carlos. And guess what? Last year we got Nobel Peace Prize.
See you.
Just YMCA for doing great work. And now I'm asking Kim, what exactly we did to achieve that recognition and that prize?
Pardon? The last part?
What exactly we did to achieve the Nobel Peace Prize, to get the Nobel Peace Prize?
Emma, can you tell me? I thought deeply about the situation in the name of World YMCA. If we awarded a Nobel Peace Prize, it can be very wonderful. And maybe 5 years ago, when Yuan was General Secretary of World YMCA, and at that time, Syria's civil war was occurred, and many refugees come to Europe. And the European YMCA, Juan also, did eagerly for the refugees. And I remember that the Thessaloniki refugee camp site. So at that time, many YMCA leaders say, say that we can also can win Nobel Peace Prize. And actually, from that time, I studied YMCA history, and Ang Dinang, the post-Nobel Peace Prize winner, and John Almott. Actually, John Almott was in the name of WSCF, and he was deeply engaged to the prisoners of war, PLO,
PWI.
PW. Anyway, so in the DNA of YMCA, World YMCA history and the YMCA movement, I felt that we tried to help and support refugees and wounded soldiers and some races who are suppressed by the superpower or military power. And actually, in Korea case, Korean YMCA history, World YMCA also supported deeply to Korean YMCA movement. So when Korea YMCA was under Japanese government, when we are colonial period, but Korean YMCA had one nation voting right. When I studied about Korean YMCA history, John Almott supported Korean YMCA deeply, and deep friendship with President. Anyway, if 2030, in order to be awarded Nobel Peace Prize, I suggest one agenda. If we do eagerly and hold the YMCA movement leaders come together for this agenda, maybe we can achieve Nobel Peace Prize. Actually, we receive Nobel Peace Prize means that we can do something good to the world. So it's meaningful. What I want to suggest is that because of climate risk, there will be so many climate refugees in the world. Mm-hmm. And so in the climate action area, there are so many agendas. The carbon decrease and the extra. And actually, but the climate refugees will be increased more and more. And now also we can find out, and some analysts, political analysts, says that Syria civil war also generated by climate crisis. So climate crisis moved the people from their traditional area to city and make conflicts. And also when I heard from the Mongolian friend that in Ulaanbaatar there are so many people, their population is very, very big, and maybe 80% of the citizens come through the grassland. But now the area become desert, so they have to move to the Ulaanbaatar, the capital of Mongolia. So, and also we know that because of the sea level high, there will be many climate refugees have to move another country or another areas. And so yesterday, we heard from Ban Ki-moon, and he says that climate change is the most important challenge to us, and also we have to have a global citizenship and also humanitarian mind, and we 122 or 4 country national movement we have, and we study together, and the strategical mind, if we work together, one goal, to protect the climate refugee, it will be maybe very meaningful. And when Obama speech address in the audience, he says that I am the protector of the brother, I'm the protector of sister. It's come from the Old Testament, and I suggest that YMCA can be the protector of the climate refugees.
Yeah.
That's all.
Interesting vision. Yeah. Yeah, actually, yep. Immigration of nations has always been the reason for conflicts, actually, the all world conflicts. And we are facing it again, and the humanity has a challenge to manage it properly, and we as a civil society have a role to play with it. And thanking Kim and also for showing us the Nobel Peace Prize medal. But now let's go to Javier, and with his rich executive experience, and ask him, Javier, are our dreams possible to happen, or they are just dreams?
No, first of all, thank you very much. So inspired, Emma, first with your presentation, just fantastic. To Marta, Rami, and Mr. Kim, really inspired. And yes, I believe all the dreams are possible as long as we put the passion, the commitment, the action. And normally what we need to do is walk what we talk. And normally if we put ourselves, as Mr. Kim says, with a common agenda, things are possible to be done and is achievable. If I'm taking this difficult task of what has been mentioned, but I would like to put few points of what I have heard. And I will try to start with Marta, because Marta, at the end, you mentioned something that it is true. We have to be, at the end of the day, focused to do with quality and to be the best on the ecosystem. And I think that is a key component to say, if we want to be focused best on the ecosystem, what will be the actions that can be taken. And what I heard very strongly is, first of all, mental health and psychological support as a key component on where you can be a champion. The second one that you have highlighted is certainly the climate crisis, as mentioned, and focus on climate displacement, on climate refugees. And the third one, you have highlighted a very strong message around child protection. On what does it mean, the impact in the generations to come, if we are capable to offer them what you have called in one way or another a safe environment. And to me, something that resonates all the time of what I have heard is, at the end, is human dignity as a foundation. Indeed, we have been connected by our own similar founder, Henry Dunant. And the spirit there, and what I heard in this presentation, is how human dignity needs to be preserved. And whenever action that we do is ensuring that we are capable to preserve human dignity and ensuring that the voices of the people that is affected by it can be heard in one way or another. And Rami, your story is a way to represent how human dignity can be transformed in 2030. It is about human dignity, what we see in everything that we do. When in the eyes of those who have lost all or could lost everything, we still see pride and love and caring for others and hope. And Marta, you mentioned something that really connected me very much, because you say, while we have the capacity for helping people, we have also to have the capacity for caring for our own, in order to ensure that when we talk about dignity, human dignity promotion, we will be able to do it in the right way. And it's human dignity, what we see when volunteers, I'm pretty sure in all your network, who have lost everything, focus on serving their communities, hit hard by any tragedy. So I think that's an important component to highlight. If I can give a few observations as well, you have mentioned in your presentation that in 2030, you are a bridge, a connector that is able to provide some values and some set of values and some set services as a network that can be impactful. And I think I go back to the point that if their focus is in 3 areas, and those 3 areas, you are going to be the best of the best, that is across the world, this is going to be achievable in order to really be impactful. And yes, indeed, that probably will reach to the dream of a Nobel Prize. But because climate crisis cannot be separated from mental health, cannot be separated from what children of today will be affected in 2030. Is an issue of responsibility and triangulation in terms of how things are being done. But you also mentioned in your presentations, and I will try to bring this element connecting to Marta and to Rami. You mentioned something super powerful, which is the capacity when you experience something that is strong and is difficult to achieve, the capacity to rebuild your spirit of action, your own human being with the perspective of bringing love, compassion, care, and be aware of hate. And I think that is a transformational way of looking the world in the future. 2030, you have been a transformational people that sends this message that love is 10 times more powerful than hate or those who make things difficult. But the other thing is, Rami, you put a strong message on the child and on how to protect, how to avoid that children hope of celebrating will not be affected anymore. And you mentioned your 3 components on your 4 points, but there is one that I would like to highlight, because this capacity to tell the story is important and to speak up is important. But at the same time, we have to have the courage to speak up, but also we need to have the courage to be silent when we need to be silent. Because sometimes when we are able to be silent, we will be able to reach to that people that probably not others will be able to reach. And that capacity and maturity in 2030 than saying, we will know when we will speak up and we will know when to be silent is also important, because that gives the trust and the credibility to the organization across the world. And that is a very difficult challenge. In organizations like ours that is neutral, impartial, many times we have to contain our emotions for the purpose of action. And the purpose of action many times pays the results when we see that we are able to reach to people in need. And Mr. Kim, you didn't mention too, but in your introduction it was mentioned. I worked many years in this bridging the two Koreas. I worked many years in connecting and trying to bring dialogue between the two Koreas. And probably we will never know that the Peace Prize will be because the climate displacement or the climate crisis may help to bring the two Koreas together. Finally, what does it imply a safe space in today's world? And Marta, you mentioned something that your dream is these infrastructure facilities. But in 2030, probably you will have infrastructure facilities that will have two components. Those that are physical, but those that are digital, that connects a global network in the same space for dialogue, for peace, for engagement, for participation, and for building resilience. So that connection is important. And finally, just to highlight, I will not leave it because you mentioned something that when we said helping people and caring for people, YMCA is already in 2030 a leader in terms of duty of care of your own. Because if we want to be the ones who serve humanity in one way or another, we have to be the example of duty of care first on ourselves. And if I end with a personal story, just to mention your dream, one of your dreams, Marta, was to work with, that there will be a space to work with a YMCA and for many young people. I started as younger as many of the people that is in the room as a volunteer. I was 13 years old, and I am the Undersecretary General of this organization. So I'm pretty sure that you and many more will be able to achieve if you put the compassion, the commitment, the ethics in the way we work, when we promote values, and that we ensure that we can really move things to the level that we want. So just to say, this will happen to you and to many people in YMCA, and I'm pretty sure, because you have a fantastic leader, Carlos, you are there, I guess, and I want to say that you already have in YMCA a great leader that constantly is looking for a stronger YMCA, not only for the present, but for the future. So thank you very much, and I pass the floor to you back.
That we again go back to our tools and reflect on what we heard, and also think about questions to the panel from the audience, and also that also goes to the online participants, that you can use these 5 minutes to send us questions, which my friend Nico will collect and forward to the panelists. So 5 minutes of interaction with each other, and then we will come back. 1-1. Okay, friends, we are a bit behind the schedule, so that's why, you know, let's cut it a bit, 3.5 minutes. Now it's time for questions, and my colleague Jessica has the microphone, so if you have questions, please introduce yourself, and also if the question is individually addressed to any of the panelists, online or offline, just say who you are addressing the question to. Juan.
Thank you, Vardan. Thank you to the panelists. And you know, I guess you were the only one that was to introduce property. You are Vardan, Hambardzumyan. You are from Armenia, actually, so you know a lot about all the topic that you're talking about, and efforts for peace in your region, also in the Caucasus and Armenia. I wanted to highlight that also on behalf of YMCA Europe. The question is somehow for any of you in the panel, and our friends also that join us virtually, what would be the element, the key element that really makes the YMCA special when it comes to peace work? Of course, there are other organizations, other institutions that do that work, but what, in your opinion, would be that element, particular element that makes us really special as a movement? Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. Who wants to? Emma?
Yeah, because I don't belong to the movement, so I'm happy to say from outside that actually to work without ego and to work with humility, and as Marta said, to keep the people at your center. And so I know how hungry you are for the Nobel Peace Prize, but that will not be the testimony to the work that you do. The real testimony will be how you transform the lives of people every day. And so I think it's to move beyond the ego, and it's hard as an organization to do that because we are driven, we can generate funds by how well we are known for our success, but actually it's in our humility as peace workers wherever we are that people trust us the most and feel us alongside of them. And I think that's actually what the YMCA has been about for such a long time, and why, recognized or not, you are successful at what you do, not in a accolades kind of way, but in a service to people kind of way. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Yes. Sorry, I don't know your name, but you will tell.
It's Nelson from the YMCA of Risaralda, Colombia. I'm going to translate for him. So I will let him first speak in Spanish, and then I'll translate.
Okay.
Bueno, realmente ayer que estaba en la otra charla de la tarde tenía esta pregunta y no me fue posible hacerlo por el tiempo. Y entiendo que realmente esta pregunta era para este espacio.
Yesterday I was in another panel and I had this burning question that I wanted to make, but I realized now that I couldn't make it because it was meant to be asked here.
Yeah.
Lo que me llevo de esta conferencia es lo que Emma decía. Hoy tenemos un nuevo fuego y son las voces y las acciones de los jóvenes.
What I'm taking from this conference is that today we have a new fire, and that fire is the voices and actions of youth.
Y la gran pregunta que hoy me surge y que ayer la sentía es cómo responder a las voces de esos jóvenes que hoy nos están pidiendo a YMCA una posición. En Colombia.
And the big question that I had is that how do we respond to the voices of those youth who are asking us today to take a stand as a YMCA?
En Colombia, el año pasado tuvimos un estallido social donde los jóvenes fueron los protagonistas.
Last year we had a social explosion, civil unrest in Colombia, where youth were at the front and center of that situation.
Acabamos de tener unas elecciones presidenciales donde por primera vez tenemos un presidente de izquierda, una vicepresidenta afro, pobre, activista en medio ambiente.
We just went through elections process, and we have, for the first time, a leftist president, a vice president who is a woman, a black woman, coming from like a humble family, and an activist.
Y fue precisamente ese fuego que ayudó mucho ese fuego de jóvenes que ayudaron a tener hoy ese gobierno que tenemos.
And it was precisely that fire from young people who created or who made possible for this government to be in place today.
Y esos mismos jóvenes son los que, vuelvo a la pregunta, nos piden a YMCA cuál es nuestra posición frente a conflictos y situaciones donde quieren vernos también parte de la solución, pero con en un rol activo. Y escuchando...
I have a short memory, sorry.
Yeah, but can you please say what is the question?
¿Cuál es la pregunta?
Yeah.
¿De qué manera YMCA, porque escuchaba al expositor de la Cruz Roja, me perdona que no recuerdo el nombre, pero él hablaba algo también muy importante, que hay veces que hay que tener voz y hay otras que hay que tener silencio, sabiendo que ese silencio también va a llevar a algo bueno. Y entiendo el rol de la Cruz Roja como una organización de ayuda humanitaria, pero YMCA empoderamos jóvenes, y si los jóvenes en algunos momentos nos piden estar con ellos, como me pasó a mí como director de la YMCA Risaralda, que me pedían estar con ellos también en esa acción de resistencia, pero por una posición institucional no debía estar. Y también en la charla de Ban Ki-moon nos decía el equilibrio entre la pasión de los jóvenes y la solidaridad y la compasión. ¿Cuál es el equilibrio que necesita YMCA hoy para lograr darle una respuesta a los jóvenes que nos la están pidiendo?
So I'm going to summarize.
Thank you.
I don't remember it all. No. Nelson is talking about the youth in that moment, that situation, political situation, is demanding from the YMCA a position. And we heard from the director of the Red Cross that sometimes we need to keep silent. And he understands as a humanitarian organization, the Red Cross should keep silent at some times. But he feels that as a YMCA, we cannot just ignore the voice of youth who are asking us to take a stand, a political position, and to go with them to the front of all these protests and to be with them, to walk with them, to march with them. So not so much to keep silent. They are actually questioning our silence. And
should we keep silence sometimes, or we should speak out?
Yeah. So how do we answer to the youth who are asking us to take a political stand?
Yep. Thank you. Rami, you want to answer?
Yeah. I'll actually combine. I'll go back to the first question as well. So my answer will be to both of them. I think, and I can speak about the Y movement in Palestine, because this is what I'm mostly aware of as well. I think two important things comes when you work with people on the ground is that you are working with grassroots, and that's what I believe is where the Y positions itself, that we are working with vulnerable people and youth and children on the ground, hearing their stories, working with them. And second is that we're working with human dignity. We're giving young people dignity. I'll give one example is that when we support, for instance, people with disabilities with any support, we never put YMCA donated by YMCA on it, because that's not the important thing. The service, the help is the important, and that's what gives to people that we are real. We are really there to help them, not only to make like a project or an activity. I have my own personal stand on being silent. I think the only time you need to be silent is when you are hearing others. But when you are positioning yourself, you have to speak up. And if you're real to the people, if you are real to the communities you serve, their issues are not issues that you don't surface, because if you do so, you have to question your work with the communities. This is my feeling about it.
Thank you, Rami. Thank you, Jessica. We have.
Thank you. My name is Seva, and I come from YWCA, YMCA of Sweden. It's great to see you on this stage, coming from YMCAs that are working actively in conflicts and areas where there's actually a war going on. And I believe also there will be a post-conflict situation later, and we have YMCAs in those contexts, and it's great, and I'm happy that we have movements in those places, and I'm proud of this global movement. But my question is also, how do we connect YMCAs in other places, especially local YMCAs that may feel quite far from being in a context of a war or an open conflict? How do we engage them well, maybe even care, but also to feel that they are a part of a movement that actually are working for peace, when maybe you are doing a summer camp in a small city in Denmark or somewhere else? Yeah, how do we connect that youth work somewhere where is not a conflict to that work that you are doing, the important work of actually creating peace and reacting to a conflict?
Thank you. Yep. Marta.
That's a great question. Thank you. I've been actually thinking about it a lot. So I feel like when I'm speaking about Ukraine, because this hits home literally, I'm most of the time thinking about other young people that are who are not Ukrainians. What I'm trying to say is that all young people are affected by war. All young people are affected by conflict. It's not that Ukrainians or Russians or other nationalities at war are affected. It's everyone. It's just a different kind of impact, different kind of trauma. I mean, just by reading the news every day, you get so traumatized, you get so depressed, you lose hope, you feel like life is useless and helpless and senseless. And that's it. That's how young people are affected. So my message and answer to your question is probably, again, focusing on your own, and while helping others and supporting others and standing in solidarity with Ukraine or any other country, stay where you are and listen to your own young people and hear what they have to say about what is happening in the world, because I am 100% confident they are affected as well in their own way. Just providing that safe space for those people to speak up and share about how they are feeling about what is happening in other countries, to other young people, to their friends in other YMCAs, and also using our organization and our global connection as another means of connecting those people together and share stories and letting them talk to each other and understand this conflict in a more deep and meaningful way, if it makes sense.
Thank you, Marta. We don't have online questions, right? And we don't have offline questions, which is what? Yep. And this is last, if you allow, because of the time. Otherwise, we'd go hours and hours.
Thank you very much. My name is Nato. I'm from YMCA England and Wales. Thank you, panelists, for an excellent time. My question is a bit of a personal one for all of you, really. I was just going to ask, what gives you hope? And, or if I put it differently, using metaphors, which is always beautiful, how do you fill your tank? How do you fill your cup? Because we know that peace building is very draining. It's not for the faint-hearted. So how do you fill your tank to keep going on this terrain? Thank you.
Thank you.
It's
me?
If you want.
Hope can be made by movement, continuous movement. We can make hope. In Korean context, I want to say something related to him. We Koreans lost hope, hopeless situation maybe 36 years under colonial government. And before the colonial government, maybe 50 years, we also fight against for the modern country. And after liberation, Korea was divided, two countries, even though Korea was one of the winners in the Second World War, but Korea was divided, not Japan. You cannot understand what I mean. But anyway, Koreans' modern history is very, we got so much tragedy things. And after liberation and divided two countries, Korea was under military government, military dictatorship. And maybe 150 years, Korean people fight against the central power. And we believe that we can make a good country by civil power. So the true hope, historical hope, come from the people. And in my idea, the movemental orientation can continue the hope of the future. And the hope is the engine of the historical movement. Anyway,
thank you, Kim. Thank you. And I really want to add on that when you are doing peace work, you regularly need to celebrate peace, even if you don't have a good reason to do that even. But you have to celebrate it, because if you don't celebrate, if you don't see your achievements, you will burn down, you will burn out. So right now we have a moment to celebrate, because we in YMCA Europe, we have Roots Peace Prize, which has been given to different national YMCAs who have done good work in peace work. And in my hand is the Peace Prize from 2021, which has a very interesting history, because the medal is made in Armenia by a very interesting artist. Then it traveled to Hungary to reach our friends from Kosovo in September, but they were refused visa. So then this whole thing had to travel to Spain together with my colleague to stay there until the next occasion. Then my colleague brought it back to Denmark, and thanks God, now in this hall, we have Juan Simoes Iglesias, Secretary General of YMCA Europe, and delegation from YMCA Kosovo. Finally, we can hand over the medal to them. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Come here. If you want, we have 2 minutes.
I just think here that thank you for standing and thank you for the applause. And I think what you're hearing here and what you're seeing in the world, Kosovo, we're on that path. We're not there yet. It's 20 years. all our leadership were children refugees, and we've created perhaps one of the best YMCAs in the world, but the people of Kosovo have done that. So if you want a hope story, if you want a blueprint, I'm not going to say it's working or it's going to work, but hope and Kosovo YMCA. Thank you.
Thank you, Adi. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And thanks to the panelists, they disappeared. They are here. And to Emma and Javier, thank you very much. And to finish, we will just put a film which is about the project Roots, which YMCA Europe is doing. If you are in rush, please go. If you are not, you can watch it. And there are some guidebooks or peace work guidebooks on the table. If somebody is interested in it, you can take a free copy. Thanks, Emma. Thanks, Javier. We keep in touch.
Roots for me. Roots for me. Roots for me. Roots for me. Roots for me means family.
Family.
Belonging. Connections. Friendship.
Friendship.
Friendship. Safety. Hope.
Support.
Awareness. Empathy.
Understanding.
Acceptance. Sharing feelings. Learning. Growth. Self-development. Creativity. Quality. Privilege. Change. Peace. Love.
Light. Roots for me means a lot.